Hello and welcome to an advanced tutorial to Creator Studio. I have a part 1 version. If you haven't seen that yet, I would highly recommend it. We'll leave the link in the description box. This video will make a lot more sense if you watch that one. It's not absolutely necessary, but if you want a better sequence of learning, I would recommend that. So in this video, it is quite longer, as you can see by the time length. I do go over, I want to say about 85%, 90% of all the cool things you can do in Creator Studio in terms of the target spawners and target behaviors. So basically where you want the targets to spawn, how you want them to spawn, how many you want them to spawn, and how you want them to move, their different sizes, all those kinds of details that's in this video. So no further ado, let's begin. All right, so let's go ahead and open Creator Studio. On the home page, we'll go to Custom up top and then Creator Studio here on the left. And then we have two options. One is new from template and one from new empty. So if we go to templates, we'll see all these replicated gray box maps from these different games. So there's Valorant, Rainbow Six, Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, and some aim lab templates. We're gonna go ahead and just create our own. So new from empty, and we're gonna name this Creator Studio 2. And the width and length, we'll go ahead and leave those. These are how big the map's gonna be. And we have these different terrain type options, like grass and cement and grid lines. I really like this one because it helps me kind of just see, it's like a ruler, right? It's like a grid and I can lay down things in straight lines. All right, so let's get into the meat of this video. So what we're going to start with are the targets. So up here on the left, we'll drop down targets and we have two options. We have spawners and then we have waypoints. And these are what's going to determine where our targets are spawning and also a little bit of how they're going to behave or how they're going to react. So let's go ahead and start with the area spawner. We'll just work our way down. So we've got our area spawner here, and of course we can hit our hotkeys to go ahead and rotate them. And of course, we can use our shortcut keys down here to rotate them. And I went over all of this in Creator Studio Part 1 video. So I'm not going to go into the details of how to, what the shortcut keys are, how to do the basics of moving things around. So I would highly recommend watching that video if you haven't seen that. All right, so we've got the area spawner here. And let's go ahead and face it towards us. And then we're going to lift it up. Now we've got like a little wall here in front of us. And if we check our rotation here, it's not exactly even. So I'm going to go ahead and just click 0 and make sure everything is square. You can go ahead and double check like this. I'm going to shrink it a little bit. And now we need to set some bots. So as we can see here in this little gray box area, we can see the spawner 1278 is the ID of this spawner. And then it says no bot. What we can also do is name this spawner as well. So we can just go ahead and name it 1278 or whatever you want. So we're going to click this little bot icon here. And it's going to say no bot assigned. Oh yeah. So let's go ahead and assign a bot. So over here on the right side, we're going to click new. So we have options to load bots. If I click load, it's actually going to show me every single bot that I've made. And then also all the ones that I've downloaded from other tasks from the workshop. So if I just left click and drag all the way down, you can see all these different bots. So we can go ahead and just load those if we want, but we're going to make our own a new one. So we're going to click new, and we have these options for different bots. So if we click sphere, we'll see the sphere right there. We can go to cube, see a cube, and headshot bot. So this one, so as we can see, the headshot bot is not facing us. And if we just rotate it the right way, then it'll be facing us. And the reason why it's dropping is because we don't have something called no gravity bot behavior, which I'll go over here in a second. But let's just go back to the rest of the bot options. And right here, so we'll go here, go back to new. And we have a disk, which looks like that. A little target disk. We have a humanoid, which is a humanoid robot. Let's go ahead and just fix this for. Then we have target man, just like a flat cardboard thing. So we're going to go ahead and just use a sphere. We're going to rotate it back so it's facing us. Okay, there we go. So we've got a sphere. And then we're going to name this bot sphere 1. And here you can add a description of the bot. So you can add it's the sphere on targets, what is it? Area spawner, whatever you want to, describe it so you can see the properties and stuff. Okay, so we've got our simple sphere, and now we have the option to set it to infinite health, so it just never dies. We have the hit points here, so we're just going to leave it to 1. And then we have show destruction FX, so when we kill it, it's going to give us a visual. So we're going to go ahead and click save. And now, when we look at the gray box here that I can left click and drag around, we see sphere 1. So we've got it loaded on this wall. Let's go ahead and click the icon, the little robot icon, and it's going to load the sphere now. And we're going to expand or open up the bot behaviors. So this is where all the magic happens for how the bot's going to behave. So what I mentioned earlier is no gravity. So we're going to left click and just drag this over on top of the bot. And now what you'll see is that our target, our sphere, when it spawns, it just floats in the air. So gravity no longer affects it. So that's the only behavior we have. So let's go ahead and add some more. And I'm not going to go over every single one of these, but I'm going to go over the popular ones to get you guys started. And of course, what I would recommend to learn these, is how I learned it, is just drag and drop these and just see what happens. Everything updates in real time. So you can just see, on the fly, what does this do, and then you can mess with the values. So we're going to go ahead and let's apply the strafer maneuver. So under maneuver right here, we're going to left click strafer. And now the bot is strafing, but it's not strafing in the direction we want. It's strafing up and down. So we're just going to go ahead and rotate. There we go. And then we're going to rotate it so it's facing us. All right, so now we could see that our bot is strafing left and right. So if we go here, we can see these values under strafer. So we have a lot of these behaviors will have something called min-max and interval time. So speed, min-max, so right now, the minimum speed that it's going to move is 5. And the maximum speed it's going to move is 10. So if we set this to 3 and 3, it's always going to move at a constant 3 speed. If we set this to a 1 and a 50, now it's randomly going to change from 1 to 50 speed at these intervals. So at intervals, min-max, 0.2 to 0.8. So let's go ahead and just reset this back to 3 and 3. And then interval min-max, so every 0.2 seconds to 0.8 seconds, it's going to change directions. Okay, so if we just set this to 1 and 1, now it's just going to be every 1 second, it's going to switch directions. So let's go ahead and bump the speed up to 5 and 5. And then direction change speed. So this is when it changes directions. We can set the speed. So for example, if we set this to 50 from 100, there's going to be a slight lag or delay. It's not going to be an instant change of direction. You see how there's kind of a little pause. And then if we set this to 150, it's just instantly going to change directions. So in most games, the targets don't strafe this quickly. There is going to be a little bit of pause. So we're going to go ahead and just set that to 80. Spawn type, what this is, I believe what this is when it dies, you can choose if you want the target to spawn towards the left, right side, or random. I think that's what that is, but we'll go ahead and just click random. And now let's go ahead and apply some other behaviors. So under shape, we'll drag over scalar. And this is going to be the size of the target. So right now, everything's set to 1, 1, 1. If we set this to 5, 5, 5, it's going to be a huge target. Okay. So let's set this to 0.3. And if we set this to 10 and 15, it's going to be some weird shape. So you can get really clever. And this scalar applies to all the other bots as well. So we can make some really interesting targets. We're going to just go back to 1, 1, 1. And now if we want to change the color, under shape and color changer, we'll just left click drag. And now we can have options for start color, end color, and then the time if we want it to shift from one color to another. So let's go ahead and make this red and see we can see it changing to white. And after 3 seconds, that's what's happening. So if we set this to yellow, as soon as the target spawns, it's going to shift from red to yellow in 3 seconds. So we're gonna just keep it red. So as soon as it spawns, we want it to instantly spawn with red color. So we'll set it to 0, 0. And then emissions mode, this is going to set, it's like a glowing effect. So you could see I have it red and yellow. We could see it's kind of, it's got like a tint to it. And we're just gonna disable that and go back to red. All right, so far we've got no gravity, so it's gonna float when it spawns. We've got the scalar size set to default 1, and now we've got the color. Let's go ahead and add a couple more things. Let's see. So maneuvers. So let's do forward and back. So as the name says, it's gonna move forward and back. So as you can see here, actually the way the spawner is set up, that's gonna determine which directions your target's gonna move. So for example, like this happened earlier, so if I shift this area spawner a different rotation, the strafer and forward and back, it's gonna move in the XY differently, the X, Y, and Z. Okay. So as we can see, it's strafing left and right, and it's actually moving up and down. And that's okay, we can use that. So let's go ahead and use the forward and back to 3, and then we'll do 0.5 and 3 seconds for the interval. Now we could see it's both strafing and it's moving forward and back. So I'm actually, let's fix this. It might be confusing. Okay, there we go. So now it's strafing and it's moving forward and backwards. Okay, and if we wanted to raise this up a little bit, we can do that as well. So it's not on the floor. Of course, you can, rotate it diagonally, whatever you fancy. Okay. All right. So let's see. Other maneuvers. We have. So let's go ahead and play this task, actually. Let's just see what this looks like. So what we're going to do is we actually need to add something called on death respawn under lifecycle. So what this is going to do is just make sure that this target, when it's dead, it's going to respawn. So we can set the time here. So we're going to have it set to instant respawn. So we'll set it to 0 and 0, click save. And then right before we play, we want to check the level settings in the top right here. Shortcut key is 4. And there's like all kinds of things like scoring options, the weapons, all the stuff I went over in tutorial video number 1. But for the weapon, let's go ahead and use the shadow. Player can attack, yes. Player movement. We've got all these different player movement templates in here. We'll just go ahead and click Valorant. And yeah, everything else is fine by default. So we'll go ahead and just click save. And let's check it out. Okay, as you can see, when I click begin, now the target's gonna move strafe and move up and down. And then when we shoot it, it's gonna instantly respawn again. Somewhere on randomly within that target area that we created. Okay, now let's go back to our editor. And right here, you can also move the position of where the player starts. So by default, it's gonna be set to 0, 0, 0, and 0. Now I would also recommend using 0, 0, 0 as your starting point. So for example, this target, if I wanna make sure it's centered to the player, I can set it to 0, 0, and 0. And the rotation's all weird, so I'm just gonna go ahead and set everything back to 0. Okay. And then if I just move this blue, or just drag this handle here, and then click my shortcut keys to rotate it, now it's gonna be centered exactly with the player. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out some of the other behaviors. Take a quick water break. Now, let's see. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and actually just delete. I'm gonna replace this bot. Let's go ahead and just create a new one from scratch. So we're gonna go to new, and let's do a headshot bot this time. So the headshot bots, once we click it, of course, there's no behaviors on it right now. So let's go ahead and rotate our spawner here so it's on the floor. Okay, we can just name this headshot tutorial 2. Click save. And let's click the button to load up the bot and add some of the behaviors. And we can do chasing is a useful one. So what chasing does is what the name says, we can make the bot or whatever target we want chase the user. So right now by default, we could see all the variables down here. We see the chasing speed, the min max, the target distance, the circle distance, and then some other things like flying. So chasing, we could set the move speed. So right now, what it's doing at this recompute time min max is that every 2 to 5 seconds, it's going to run through these variables, or it's going to decide what to do again. So right now, the speed's at 10 and 20. If we set this to 5 and 5, always going to move at 5 speed. Let's say if we wanted the bot to chase closer to the user or us, we could set this target distance min max to something lower, like 1 and 5. And now it's going to get really close to us and move a distance 1 and 5 from the user. Okay. So if we click save, now we've got that target chasing us. And let's go ahead and apply on death respawn again and set that to 0, 0. And let's see what other, okay, so blink. So as the name says, the target blinks. So it's gonna instantly kind of like teleport, depending on whatever variables we have. So right now it's blinking like really like a lot, too much for me. So we can set that to 15. So we can choose which direction the bot blinks and then also the interval time. That's what that does. And again, guys, I'm not going to go over all of them. This is going to be like too long of a video. I'm just going to show you the ones that you're going to be using a lot. Look at is a good one too. This one just makes sure that the bot looks at you. So this makes more sense when you use the humanoid because it has a face. This one, it doesn't have a face, so it just looks like it's always looking at you. So this is what you want to use look at if you have a humanoid. And let's see. Okay, so let's go ahead and just remove chasing. So we're going to hit this delete button next to it. And constant directions. This is one I use a lot. If I just drag this over, we can choose the speed it's going to move. So let's go ahead and lower it. And then we can change, or we can set which direction the bot's going to move as soon as it spawns. So as we can see, it's moving just in one direction. So this direction here, this is the X, Y, and Z, these 3 numbers. So right now it's moving at this direction at 1. So if we set this to -1, it's actually going to move back the other way. So if we set this to 0, and then if we set the direction here, now it's going to move to our left. And then if we set to -1, it's going to move to the right. Okay, so that's constant direction. And fireball shooter. So this one, if we drag it over, it does what it says. It's going to shoot fireballs at us. So we can actually change the speed. So if we want it to go really fast, we can do that. We can change the interval of when, so every 1 second it's shooting a fireball. So we can set this to 0.1 and it's going to look like an automatic. We can set how long the fireballs last. So, you know, if the bots are really far away and we want the fireballs to actually just die off, we can do that. So see if we set it to 1 second and it's actually not reaching us. And then we can set the size. So right now it's set to 0.2. We'll set it to we'll set at 1. And we're going to set to 0.2. We can see these little fireballs. And we can set the score penalty. So right now, every time we get hit, it's gonna deduct 10 points. And we can set the spread value here. So from 0 to 0.5, now it's actually, why is it doing this? Okay, it's actually, so it was actually hitting the green line. So, but it doesn't do that when you actually play. So as you can see here, we could see a little bit of spread. So it's not just shooting in straight lines. And it's actually shooting too fast for me. So let's set this to 0.5. There we go. And then target selection, it's gonna just, you know, we can have it shoot at the player. If we set fire ahead, it's just gonna just shoot straight and not at the player. And then explosion is so when it hits something, there's like an effect. So sometimes that can get visually distracting. So depending on what your goals are of the task, you can disable it. So it doesn't make that visual distraction or that visual cue. All right, so let's see some other. Okay, so we're gonna delete Fireball. And a nice one to use for tracking tasks is something called Trackable. So if I click, drag it over, we can set the sound of it. So if you click select, we can select what the actual hit sound is. Okay, and then you can preview here. I actually don't have sounds enabled for the recording, so you're not going to hear that. I will enable that now. Okay, so that's what that sound sounds like. So you can go in here and click them and preset that for people. You can set the frequency. And so how this works is, because it's trackable, you don't actually need to shoot the target. You just need to put your crosshair over it. So let's set this bot's HP to 10. And then we're going to, so once we set it to 10, now we have these options of show health bar or not. So right now we could see it, health bar is enabled, and we're gonna keep that on. And we're gonna set the damage to 1. So right now, actually we'll set the damage to 2. So every 1 second that my crosshair is tracking over this bot, it's gonna do 2 damage. So we want it to, so right now it has 10 hit points. We want it to die in, if we set this to per second, we'll do 0.2. And we're gonna actually do hit points to 20. Okay, so every 0.2 second, it's gonna do 2 damage. So that means it's gonna do 10 damage every second, right? So every second, it's gonna do 10 damage. So it's gonna take 2 full successful seconds of tracking to kill this bot because it has 20 hit points, right? So if we just times per second, 0.2 by 5, that takes us to a second. So let's go ahead and just hit play, see what this looks like. So right now the bot's actually standing still. I don't have anything on it, but let me just show you how this tracking works. So you can see that health bar tick, and that's every 0.2 seconds that I'm successfully tracking over the bot, it will count as a hit. So this is really, really useful for tracking tasks. Okay, what else? So vertical, it's like a jumping thing, or it is jumping. So right now we could see it's kind of acting twacky here, and that's because we need to adjust the variables a bit. So like the other movement behaviors, we see the speed, min, and max. So it's randomly choosing a jump height of 5 to 10. Okay, so let's see here. So we can actually, there's different behaviors like force weapon reload and give ammo, and it does exactly what it says. So you can essentially create like mini levels. So you can, like, if you kill the bot, it gives you ammo, or if you get shot by a bot, it's gonna force a weapon reload. So you can create your own little mini games with those. All right, another important one is damage areas under combat. So if you click over damage areas, right now, what we could do, because we're using the headshot bot, and I believe this damage area works on headshot bot and the humanoid only. Like, obviously it's not gonna work on a sphere because it's just one, thingy, one structure, one hitbox. The damage areas, what we're gonna do is set the head damage multiplier to 5. Actually, let's set it to 10. And then the body damage multiplier to 1. So that means every time I shoot the bot in the head, it's gonna do 10 damage. So it's gonna do 2 headshots to kill the bot, and it's gonna take 20 body shots to kill the bot in the body. Okay, and let's go ahead and just put the respawner back on the bot with on the respawn. And let's put the chasing back on so we can see what that looks like. We're gonna set the speed to a little bit slower and the distance to a little bit closer. So if we click save, go ahead and click play. Now we have this bot that's gonna be chasing us, and if we headshot it twice, it's gonna die. And then it should respawn again. And then if I shoot it 20 times in the body, it's gonna kill it, or of course I can shoot it with the headshot if it has 10 hit points or less. Okay, pretty cool, right? Okay, so if we go back into the bot, we'll see, let's see. So dodge one's interesting. So dodge, well, let's go ahead and remove chasing, and you can use mouse wheel down, up and down to quickly navigate. And if we drag over dodge, now this one's a little bit more advanced, but I want to go over it because this is kind of replicates how real people will evade. So let's go ahead and just click save. We're gonna just see what this looks like by default. So there's actually like okay, so when so what chasing does is imagine there's like a halo or a ring that we can set around the target. So if my crosshair hits that ring, it's going to then, depending on what time we have, like the reaction time of the bot, it's going to move away a certain distance. See that? But then if I'm fast with my crosshair, I can get some shots off. And that's because the reaction time is set, I think, to 1. Let's go and double check, click the bot icon. And then if we see dodge, we can see inner circle radius, inner circle delay, inner circle speed, outer circle speed, delay. So we can actually set, what when our crosshair gets to a certain distance around the bot, what that distance is, how big is the ring, and then if they hit that ring, what's the reaction? So we could, here's the dodge time. So this is, one of those things where if you just click in the numbers and then you play the task, you can quickly find out what all these variables do. All right, so let's see. So crouch, so this one, again, a pretty self-explanatory name. Right now it's set to 3 and 6 interval. So if we set this to 1 and 1 intervals, every 1 second it's gonna crouch. And we can change the crouch speed from 10 to 80, and we could see it's gonna crouch slower. And if we wanted to crouch really fast, of course, we can just increase that number. Okay, and then let's see. So life cycle, so things like health regeneration, it does what the name says. When you kill it, it gives you a certain amount of health. Add time on kill. So say if you have like an obstacle course or a maze, like you have 60 seconds to complete the course and you kill a target, it's gonna add time. So again, it's another kind of like cool mini game feature you can do with that. And does not register hit is what it says. So if I don't want anything to hit it, I can drag that over. And that's useful for like, say if you add an object for like a decoration, but you don't want it to get hit. Like say if I wanted to have a flying orb flying around, but as a visual distraction, but I don't want the user to be able to hit it, that's what I can apply. Does not register as hit. And then sounds, these are self-explanatory. You can actually override the user's default sounds. So before I showed you that little clicky sound. So if we want all the users to have that sound, we can set that, what the targets sound like when they spawn and when they're killed. Okay, so I went over most of the behaviors, and let's go ahead and now that we know the most useful behaviors and the most popular ones, let's go ahead and show you the rest of the spawners. Actually, I didn't show you the full capability of area spawner yet. So just quickly, I'm just gonna, it's gonna be rotated weird. Let's see, 0, 0. Okay, so I'm gonna create a new bot, and I'm gonna put a disk in there, and I'm gonna do no gravity. No gravity. And then I'm gonna rotate the spawner so the target is facing us, and I'm gonna just shrink the size. Now we're gonna do on death respawn. So set the bot, disk test 2. Okay, so now we've got this basic disk that it has no gravity and it's gonna spawn when it dies. Now, we can also add what's called modifiers to our target spawners, or in this case, our area spawner. So if we just left click our area spawner, we'll click add modifier. Now we have these options in here. The first one I want to show you is the wave spawning. So if I just left click wave spawning, now I can actually set the number of bots I want to spawn. So right now we could see it set the number of bots 1. So if we set this to 3, now we have 3 bots spawning. If we set this to 5, we have 5. Okay, so we're gonna just set this to 3, and we're gonna add, so the other ones get a little bit more complicated. I'm gonna go over them later. But now if we click play, we're gonna have 3 of these disks that are spawning. And when we kill one, another one's gonna spawn somewhere on that wall that we created. Okay, so this is, as the name says, area spawner. This is what you wanna do if you wanna have targets spawning in some area. Okay, so we have it set up to a wall, but you can also set up to have it like a cube. So now if we look inside, we could see all the targets are spawning somewhere randomly in this volume. Okay, so this is what area spawner is going to do. Okay, let's go ahead and delete that and then check out some of the other area spawners. So point spawner, this one's very self-explanatory. It's just going to spawn at this one point. So wherever this point is, whether it's over here, or say if we have a shape like this and then we want this point spawner to spawn on top like that, it's always going to spawn right here on this little intersection of all the axes. Okay, so if we just put in one of my bots like this, we can see that's the case. Let's go and just change this color, something dark. Okay, so that's point spawner, pretty self-explanatory. And something that's useful is you can duplicate any of these spawners. So if I hit Control D, I can create another point spawner over here and another one over here. Okay, and that goes with any of the spawners. So that wall we created earlier, the area spawner, you can do that as well. All right, so let me go over grid spawner first. So grid spawner is like area spawner, but we can actually set the grid. So what I mean by that is if we scroll down and we look at the behaviors or the settings, we can see columns, rows, and layers. So we can make this look like a grid. So instead of the target spawning somewhere randomly in the volume, we can actually have it spawn in like clean lines. Like if we just look at this floor, right? It's a grid. So let's go ahead and load one of the bots that we created, the sphere. Actually no, a disk. Let's do the disk. Okay. And then let's turn it around so it's facing us. Make it a little bit bigger. And then now we can set, let's add modifier, go to wave spawning and add, let's do 6 bots at a time. And we can set the columns, rows, and layers. So if we set the columns to 10, we could see, and then if we set the rows to 10, or let's do 5, now we can, if you imagine there's 10 columns going up and down, and then 5 rows, now we could see the targets are always spawning in like a grid, right? One of these like intersection points. And then if we made this bigger, see how they're all just spawning in one layer? If we add the layer, now there's going to be 5 layers. If you imagine if we chop this in 5, the target's going to be spawning in those layers. Okay, so we'll set the layers back to 1 and just make this a wall. Okay. And okay, so that's what grid spawner does. Okay. Now, okay, waypoint spawner. So this one's a little bit more advanced, but so we saved it for last. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, when we drop the waypoint, we can set the number of how many things that we want to link to it. So right now it's set to 0. If we set this to 2, now we open up these 2 boxes. We're able to drag over the waypoints that we want to connect to this. So let's go ahead and do that. If I go back up here and I select a waypoint, so this is the waypoint spawner. Now we click the waypoint. If we click 2 waypoints here, now we need to connect these waypoints to the waypoint spawner. So we click 2 to open up those connections here. And if we just left click the gray box, we could drag it on top of these and now link these 2 waypoints to this waypoint spawner. Okay, now what we're gonna do is add a bot to this waypoint spawner. So imagine, or think of this as like the headquarters. This is the brains and these are kind of, you know, the followers or whatever. Okay, so the bot, we're going to click load and then we're going to load the headshot bot. So now we can see that the headshot bot spawned on this waypoint. And we can now, okay, the reason why it's only set to 1 is because we need to add wave spawning. If we add wave spawning and click 2, see now both waypoints are spawned. But we actually want to delete that. We want to delete that and have it only spawn at 1. Okay. Well, maybe, what did I do? Okay, so I'm just gonna reset it to 2 and then just drag these both in. Okay, so they're actually gonna spawn at both. Why is it doing that? If I go to wave spawning, okay, so now, okay, yeah, right. So I just reset it by re-adding the wave spawning. So we could see wave spawning on the waypoint spawner is set to 1. So now only 1 bot's gonna spawn. And that's what we want for demonstration purposes. And now we can see under spawner type, we can see random available point or first in sequence. So what we wanna do is when I shoot this bot, now it's randomly gonna spawn between either 1 or 2. And the reason it's gonna randomly do that is because we have random available waypoint set. And we can also get a little bit more advanced, like if we don't want it to spawn in the same waypoint, we can click skip last spawn on random. Then it's just gonna bounce between each waypoint. Like it's gonna spawn left, right, left, right, left, right. And some of these other things are a little bit more advanced. I'm not gonna go into them. But let's go ahead and just play this. So I'm gonna drag our player guy over here. And this way we're facing our waypoints. So if I shoot that, 2 headshots. Oh, and then it's got the dodging. So we can see when we kill it, it's just randomly gonna choose a waypoint to spawn at. Okay, so that's waypoint. And of course, you know, we could duplicate this and add as many waypoints as we want. Just make sure that you link them. That way they are connected and then all of them are active. Okay, and of course you could set 3 and 3 bots on the wave spawning. So now we can see 3 of them are spawning. Okay, so that's waypoint spawner. And player path. So we can actually set the way the player moves by creating a path for them. So for example, let's go ahead and drag, oh, I didn't mention this before, but this isn't a number 1 video. You just click this, whatever you want, it's gonna load in this box, and then you just drag over. So you can't drag like straight from here, the text. All right, so we have the player waypoint 1 here, and then we have player path. So when we click player path, we need to hit 1 for the size. Now we can left click drag and connect these 2 together. Okay, so now these are connected. So let's go to player, so this one right here. And now what we could do is, so we have pause time. So pause time is at 0. So the players Let's set this to 1. And then we could do speed to next waypoint. So right now it's at 5 speed. So let's go ahead and add another waypoint over here. Okay. So now, of course, we add another one. So we need to link it. Now we've got 2 of our waypoints here. So what's going to happen is that the player is going to spawn or move from here to waypoint 1 after 1 second, and then it's going to move with 5 speed to this waypoint. Okay, so let's go ahead and click play and see what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to move to waypoint 1, and now after 1 second, it's going to move to waypoint number 2 at 5 speed. Okay, and then it's just going to bounce back and forth. So I'm going to get back to 1. And then after 1 second, it's going to bump me back over here. So you can see how you can create some interesting, mazes or obstacle course, or, if I'm moving across and I have to clear all these targets, and then I get bounced over to another area and then I have to shoot other targets, you can get really creative and fun with that. All right, so that's player path and player path waypoint. Now, a couple other things that aren't in the spawners that are really important are under shapes. So if I go to shapes and go to stationary, if we scroll all the way down, there's something called blocking cube. So this one I use a ton. So this one, as the name says, it blocks. It's a cube that blocks. So I can set it to whatever size I want. So let's say if I set it to this right here, right in front of the user. Actually, let's delete the path. So these thingies here, the path. So we have the player here, and when I spawn, I'm not going to be able to move through this at all, like anything, right? So we can set it to block us or players. We can set it to block bots. We can do weapon fire and also objects. So if we just put in a little cylinder here, okay, just to show us where, where these blocking cubes are. Oh, and just a tip, guys, when you're selecting stuff, sometimes there could be like a lot of objects, like say like, there's 3 objects here and I want to select one, but one's not selecting because they're in the way. One way is you can get as close as possible. Say if I want to click the cylinder, see how now I've got most of the cylinder selected. Now I can duplicate this. This is what I want to do. So just try to get, the most of the box selection on whatever you're trying to get to. Okay, so I want this blocking cube to also block my weapon. So if I just rotate our player and then if we hit play, we're not going to be able to move or shoot between these 2 columns. Not registering hits, but then if I move over here, now I can shoot, right? And this is also going to block me. I can't move through it. Okay, so super, super useful for setting boundaries, and customizing your levels however you want. All right, so that's blocking cube. Don't forget about that. It's under shapes, stationary, scroll all the way down, blocking cube. Okay. Now, the next thing is interactables. Okay, so pickups, slow-mo, and speed, it's like power-ups. So if I run over them, I'm going to move slower or I'm going to move faster. So that's what these do. Jump pad is like it says, when I jump over it, it's going to launch me in the air. Trigger orange. Okay, so I'll go over the portals in a second. So this is also a very important one to learn. I use this all the time. So this trigger object here is a cube that if I run into it, it's going to trigger something. So we can actually set it to triggerable by a player or a bot or an object. So let's just keep it to player for now. So if I run into this, we can make it do these types of things down here. So we can click change and we can see the options. So if we run into this, it instantly ends the task. So let's say if you want to do something where like a jumping maze course and you fall off the map, then you die. And then ends the task and then you're dead. Actually it just ends the task, it just finishes it. So if you had a maze and you run into like the finish, it closes the task. We have teleport, which I'll go over in a second. And kill, this is the kill. So this is you die and then you respawn again in the task. I believe that's what that does. Or if like, say if a bot runs into it, it's gonna kill the bot. Okay. All right, now I'll go over spawner first. So if we click spawner, now we can link a spawner to here. So let's link this one over here. This little area spawner that we have. And then we're just gonna move this forward here like that. And if we go back to our trigger object, we're going to link this area spawner to our trigger object box. I'm gonna take a water break here. So if we click our trigger box here and go to type, and we want it to spawn, okay, or spawner. And now, and also we've linked this wall area spawner to this. And now, right now, these are automatically spawning on the map because spawn on start is checked. If we uncheck that, they won't spawn on start. But what will happen is if we run into this box here, we'll just put this just for visual reference. If we run into this, it's going to trigger this area spawner to spawn all the objects. Okay, so if we hit spawn, if we run to the right of this thing, this column, it's going to trigger all of our targets to spawn. Of course, we can't shoot them because we have that blocking cube here, so we'll have to go around to shoot them. Oh, and then I just ran over the slow-mo speed. So this is, oh gosh. Your sensitivity is slow, your movement's slow, your firing speed's slow, everything's slow. But if we hit the speed, now it's so slow. Okay. Now it starts to normalize. It's starting to normalize. Then let's hit the jump pad. It's so slow. Okay, so that's the jump pad. All right. Okay, and then going back to our trigger object, so you can actually add multiple spawners, right? So if we click 2, and then we wanted, like, if we duplicated this, we duplicated this wall, and we wanted to just spawn like randomly over here. Now when I run over this, both of these will spawn up here, right? We can set the unlimited size here and link them up. Oh yeah, make sure to link them up. That okay. And then okay, so teleport. So if we click teleport, so let's go ahead and add. Just delete these, get these out of the way. We're gonna add another trigger box. So interactables, trigger object, and we're gonna set this one just over here next to the second column, like this. And then, okay, and then now what we're gonna do is click teleport. So when the player is checked, runs into this trigger object, it's gonna teleport us. Go ahead and set the size to 1. And now if we want to set the teleport location, we have to, it says waypoint list, waypoint label. So we need to add a waypoint. We go back up to our waypoints. We're going to add a waypoint. And we want the player to spawn like over here. Okay. And now we need to link this trigger object to here. Okay, so waypoint 6. So now we've got those linked, right? So if we click play, let's go ahead and run into our first trigger box, which is going to spawn both our targets up here. And now the teleport is right here, right? Remember? If we take this, it's going to spawn us at those bots right here. Okay? And of course, you could set unlimited teleporters. You can teleport anywhere on the map. You can re-trigger any of these spawners that you want by simply just adding trigger objects. You can run certain loop patterns, right? Like if you clear a room, I go to the end of the room, it teleports me to another room, and then I run, you can reuse parts of your map with this kind of loop cycle with teleport and trigger spawners. And then lights, okay? So these are important too. So this is one of my favorite features of this. So let's go ahead and I'm just gonna make a quick room. Super, super simple room. Okay, and then, so I'm just duplicating these, rotating these. Now I've got a room, okay? Now, let's go ahead, where's my player at? Okay, there's my player. So we're gonna spawn in here. Now, actually we're gonna put a ceiling on here as well, so the sunlight can't get to it. So if we go to level settings, if we look at the light direction, we can set like which direction the sun is. So if we set this to say 5, we could see there's the shadow, right? So the sun's gonna be over that way. And the map is, all the shadows are gonna behave like that. So right now, if we set this, 5, not much light. If we do 15, it's gonna, be a little bit higher. And if we do 90, it's actually gonna be straight above us. So we could see the shadow, it's right above us. That's what 90 light direction does. I think I go over this in Creator Studio first tutorial. Okay, so back to lights. So we're in our room here. It's kind of dark. And let's go ahead under lights, click some sources. So if we add a spotlight, you could see it's like a spot, right? And it's awesome because it updates in real time. So we can, so we could see here, we could set the color. So if we set this to, well, the color is the actual color of the light. And then light color is what we're thinking of about in terms of light color. Okay, so we can see it's updating in real time. So we just drag around, we could set it to white, a red hue, green hue, whatever we want. And then for light intensity, so this is just the strength of the light. So if we set this to 1, it's a little bit dimmer. If we set this to 20, it's just gonna be super bright. I'll just set this back to 3. And the light angle, so right now it's at 140, so think of this as like the cone. So if we set this to 180, it's going to be a perfect 180 degrees. If we set this to 45, now we could see the cone or the funnel shrinking down. Okay, so let's go back to set this to 90, and then the light range is how far the light shines. So if we set this to 5, actually that's too low. If we do 10, we can see it's just barely getting any light out. If we set this to like 500, it's gonna reach way out here. You could see it's like affecting things out here. So, if you want this light to only stay in the room, that's where you can set the range, get that number right. Okay, so that's what the light spotlight does. And then point light, if we drag that over, this is gonna be like, it's just shooting light out in a sphere, like 360 degrees every direction. Okay, and same thing, you could change the color of it, light intensity if we want it a little bit dimmer. All those same properties that we had in the spotlight. Okay, and then there's other like decorations like this, right? So these are kind of, if we wanted a street light, you could see it's a street light. It's pointing down, like if it's the street. If we wanted like a larger thing like this. So super, super cool. A lot of different light options. You can set like the ambiance of your environment by controlling the lights like this, instead of just having to rely on completely on the sun outside. All right, let's see. So all these other options are just decorations, like I go over in the first tutorial. So I'm not going to go over them. You have your doors, you have your windows, you have. These are ones you can combo these with so what we talked about. So for example, this goal object right here. So if we wanted to make this a teleporter or wanted to end a task, we could create a trigger object. So if we just drag over a trigger object and kind of match the size, now when you run over this thingy, it's gonna cause something to happen with, whatever we want it to happen. To teleport, if we wanted to trigger some objects, and all these bots spawn around the user and start attacking them, we have that option. Right, like something like this. Okay. And then, so these are all decorations. So here's our portals, like that. Obviously this one's a little bit too big, so we'd have to shrink the size. Okay. And let's see. Yeah, everything else are just decorations. So just to recap, what we went over are the different spawner options. So the area spawner, things spawn in an area, pretty self-explanatory. Some are random in that area. The point spawner, everything's are just gonna spawn in that single point. Think of it like a pixel, just one point spawn. Waypoint spawner is we can, this is the headquarters, the waypoint spawner. Now we can link waypoints to it. Remember, you just click the waypoint spawner, add the size, and then just left click drag to whatever you want to link to it. We have the grid spawner. So it's basically the area spawner, but now we could set grids on it. So we can customize how we want objects to spawn it within it, like we have the floor. And the player path. So we can set how we want the player to move by creating certain path points right here. Okay. And the other one, big one, don't forget about shapes, stationary, and then blocking cube. You can set the blocking cube here, set some boundaries and where the player can move or where the bot can move, and even make it a invisible shield that blocks fire. And then finishing off are all the different light options. Point light, spotlight, those are the ones I use often, but these are nice too because you can create environments, right? Which is cool. Like you don't have to put a light, the decoration of the structure, the object of the light, and then create a point light. It's already connected. All right, yeah, everything else I went into tutorial number 1. Again, if you haven't seen that, I would watch that, rewatch that. You can always come back to these videos to refresh yourselves. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And then I would also say, if, again, I didn't go over everything, like all the target behaviors, but this is where you can do, A/B testing and trial and just left click stuff over and just see what they do. Like scalar random, scalar adaptive, scale over time. I didn't go over that. If I just drag it over, we could see things updating in real time. So what's nice are all the names are pretty, it explains exactly what they do. So right now we have scalar random. So these objects are scaling random sizes at random times, or not at random times, at these set times that we have. So just drag and drop over things and just see what they do. If you don't see it in the game, like in the editor update in real time, go ahead and click play, and then you can test it there. All right, hopefully you learned the ins and outs of Creator Studio. Again, if you haven't seen tutorial number 1, go ahead and watch that. It has all the shortcuts and how to quickly navigate and build stuff. And then of course you can come back to this video as a refresher. Give this a video thumbs up if it was helpful, and see you in the next one.